Capitol tonight. Facing a more than $9 billion budget gap, state lawmakers have been unable to find common ground so far on what should be cut from this year's spending plan, and potentially who and what should be taxed as well. And if that wasn't enough of a headache for my next guest, he is also dealing with a conference member who was slapped with civil charges by the state attorney general. John Sampson is the leader of the Senate Democratic Conference, and he joins us in the studio tonight. How are you, leader?
Good night, Liz. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let's just get this part out of the way. You have a member, as was mentioned. This is the Majority Leader, Pedro Espada.
Yes. Yesterday
was slapped with a considerable civil charges of
Correct.
Allegedly, the Attorney General says, looting his nonprofit, Soundview, of $14 million worth of charitable funds for personal use, like travel and sushi dinners, etc. And then today we find that there's been an IRS, FBI, and AG raid on Soundview, and that seems to be escalating this to a point where there might be federal charges involved. First of all, have you spoken to Senator Espada?
Yes, I spoke to Senator Espada yesterday with respect to these allegations.
And did he say anything to you? I mean, he had a press conference in which he was quite vehement and denied all of these charges, called them falsehoods and lies, actually, and professed his innocence. Did he say that to you?
He expressed the same thing, not only to me, but also to our conference with respect to the allegations that have been levied against him by the Attorney General.
And did you believe him?
I believe my member.
You do?
Yes.
And you're going to be standing by him at this point going forward until more happens for re-election as well?
Of course, this is a civil matter. This is not a criminal matter. This is not an indictment. And we will cross that bridge when it happens.
Well, actually, there are some of your members who feel quite strongly about this. You have at least one that I can think of. It's Senator Neil Breslin, who, of course, is an Albany area Democrat. And he said he's always been quite outspoken since the coup, so we should probably remind people that there's a long history with your conference and Senator Espada, who jumped ship, if you will, last summer, and actually with Hiram Monserrat, who's no longer with the conference.
But along with the 30 Republican senators.
Yes, but those two had to leave in order to flip the conference, correct?
But it's not only two, it was 30 plus the two.
Okay, fine. So, but flipped the chamber back into control temporarily of the Republicans. Then Hiram came back. Then Espada deadlocked things, refused to come back. So there was a lot of bad blood, let's just say. And Breslin said today he thinks actually Mr. Espada should resign his voluntarily. As you note, there's only a charge here. There's actual no conviction. What do you feel about that he should give up his leadership post?
At this point in time, as I indicated to you earlier, Liz, this is a civil matter. Senator Breslin is entitled to his opinion, and dealing with respect to his leadership positions, if there is a criminal indictment later on down the line, we will deal with it as it manifests.
We actually speaking earlier, but it's very interesting. In order for him to come back after the coup, he wanted to retain some kind of leadership position. And what you had done, actually, is have the Senate president appoint him majority leader, correct? So your members never actually took a vote on Senator Espada becoming majority leader.
There was a resolution put forth by the President Pro Tem Senator Malcolm Smith, which bifurcated the title. And at that point in time, Senator Smith appointed Senator Espada majority leader.
So, technically speaking, Senator Smith could also unappoint Senator Espada. It would require no vote by your conference.
Technically, you're correct, Liz.
And if there was, in fact, a movement of a majority of your members to do so, would you allow that to happen?
At this point in time, I think our movement should be concentrating on resolving this budget, reducing spending, creating jobs, and providing property tax relief. As I indicated to you earlier, this is a civil matter, and the necessary authorities are going to take a look at this. We might have to cross or do something later on, but it hasn't reached to that level yet. But as we will deal with it as it proceeds accordingly. But I think our full concentration has been dealing with closing this $9 billion budget deficit. I know the returns are almost in from April 15th, and they're not that bad. So hopefully we can work towards not only providing the fiscal structural relief that is necessary for the continuation of budgets throughout the years, but also putting some sort of structural fix with respect to property tax.
There's been a lot of upheaval in your conference. You need, one of the reasons why I would expect that you want to keep Espada around is because you need 32 votes to pass anything, including the budget, as you note, which is so critical and now late, considerably late, past the April 1 deadline, just past 3 weeks late, if I'm not mistaken. So you need that vote. Are you sorry that you allowed him to come back to the conference?
Liz, first things first, the upheaval that you're talking about is we're very passionate upon which direction the state is going into. We had a history in which there were high taxes, spending that put us into this predicament. I look at it as a 16-month insurgence. You have an institutional structure and framework that has been one party for decades. If you look at it in the 20th century, the Republicans were in control. If you look at it, 98% of the time. We have to deal with an infrastructure that has been created, and we're dealing with that. We're dealing with fiscal issues. We're dealing with, if you're looking at the budget that doubled in 1996 from $60 billion to $120 billion, the structural debt went from $31 to $54 billion. We're paying debt service. That means we're paying anywhere between $5 to $6 billion coming off the top that we have to pay this year because they're dealing with debt service. We're fighting for issues that are the bread and butter issues of the people of the state of New York. People want jobs. People are concerned about being able to provide food on the table, a roof over their head. People want us. If we're asking people to cut spending, we need to cut spending.
But you're actually not doing that, with all due respect. I mean, right now what we have is a stalemate on the budget, a conference in chaos, a lot of problems that are going on, and you're deadlocked. You're deadlocked because you're at odds with the Assembly over being able to do one thing or another, right? So, but before we just leave, let me just ask you one last thing about Espada before we leave this, and I do want to get to the budget because, of course, it is a critical issue for everyone who's watching and for everyone in New York. On Espada, and the charges are quite serious. But as an attorney, I understand, and as we were talking earlier before the show, actually there were further measures that the Attorney General could have taken here, and he did not. Is that correct?
Before I get into that issue, when you talk about chaos, Liz, everybody talks about chaos and dysfunction. Nobody thought we can get 32 people on the resolution that we passed, our budgetary resolution.
That was unusual unity for you. Yes, it was.
But if you noticed, our conference has been in unity with respect to the legislation that we have passed that have been bottled up for years by the prior majority. And if you look at it, people are seeing things. We're passing legislation that is important to the people of the state of New York. As of yesterday was Earth Day, we passed some serious legislation. Our colleagues on the other side voted against legislation dealing with secret that was very important with respect to citing. But what I'm saying, Liz, is, people think it's chaos, but it's not chaos. We passed the resolution, 32 votes. No plan, nothing from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle.
Okay, before you dissolve into